past year has once again, unfortunately, brought more tragic stories of law enforcement injured or even killed by careless drivers out there. The legal rights of those injured in the line of duty are certainly complex. Here to explain some of those is Tom Sinus of Sinus Dramis Law Firm with our subject this week. And Tom, first and foremost, I guess, where do injured law enforcement officers go for immediate needs like maybe lost wages and obviously medical bills?
It's a great question. That's usually always the first question when you're encountering anyone or anyone whose family is in distress from a serious crash like this. And for law enforcement, they have two places to go that are systems that are not built around fault, meaning it doesn't matter who caused the crash. And the first of those systems is the workers' compensation system. And this, of course, would apply to injured law enforcement who are injured while they're on the job. And it applies, of course, to anyone who has a workplace injury in general. But what's unique about law enforcement injured in the course of working and driving an automobile or involved in a crash with an automobile is that law enforcement also have access to the automobile no-fault system, just like anybody else who's injured in an automobile accident. And under our legal rules in the state of Michigan, there's a complicated interface between the auto no-fault system and the workers' compensation system. Our law recognizes that there's this interface, and the two laws have specific ways of relating to one another. But those two places are generally where injured law enforcement will go immediately after a crash for things like medical bills and lost wages.
Obviously, there are some times where things are not covered by either no fault or even workers' compensation. What about those issues?
Right. So there are those things that are not recoverable in workers' comp or no fault. And typically these are claims that are reserved for what we call liability claims or third-party claims. And the concept there is whether or not the injured law enforcement has a claim against the person who caused the crash. Like, for example, in some of these recent tragic stories, we've seen law enforcement injured by another drunk driver. Well, in those circumstances, the injured law enforcement may have a claim against that third party for what's commonly called a liability claim. Mm-hmm. And that's different from workers' comp. It's different from no fault. And yet these systems are still all interrelated. And then on top of it, there's a whole series of unique rules in state statute about when injured law enforcement or other first responders can bring a third-party liability claim against the person who caused the crash. So this really illustrates the complexity of when you have various legal rules that come together with one particular type of group, in this case, those injured in the line of duty.
Yeah, been in the news too much, unfortunately. Tom, where do people track you down with some questions?
Well, they can find us online at www.sinusdramis.com. They can shoot us an email at info@sinusdramis.com, or they can give us a call at 616-301-3333.
Okay. Thanks as always, Tom.
Thank you, Derek.